Someone you love is gone. You're standing over their body. It's cold, it's still, and you have no idea what to do next. There's no funeral home, no priest, no rulebook, just you, your group, a body, and a question nobody had ever answered before. What happens now? This is one of the most human moments that has ever existed, and scientists have been digging it up literally for over a century. What they found rewrites what we thought we knew about grief, belief, and what it actually means to be human. By the end of this video, you'll know exactly what ancient people did the moment someone died, what they put in graves, why some bodies were covered in red paint, what the oldest known burial on Earth looks like, and what one grave filled with over 10,000 handmade beads tells us about love. We're going back 430,000 years, and we're starting at the bottom of a pit in Spain. In the mountains of northern Spain there is a cave called Sima de los Huesos. In Spanish that means the pit of bones. To reach it, you have to crawl through narrow passages for over a quarter-mile underground. Then you drop down a 45-foot vertical shaft in complete darkness. At the bottom, researchers found something that should not exist. Over 5,500 human bones, belonging to at least 28 individuals. Men, women, children, elderly, all piled together, all the same species, a human ancestor that predates Neanderthals by hundreds of thousands of years. There were almost no animal bones mixed in. No signs that a predator dragged the bodies there. The bones weren't scattered by a flood. The only explanation researchers could not rule out was this. Other humans carried those bodies down there, one by one, and left them in the dark. But here's the detail that crossed the line from practical to something else entirely. Among all those bones, researchers found a single stone hand axe. It was made from bright red quartzite. It didn't come from anywhere near that cave. Someone carried it from a distance, and they left it there with the dead. That axe had no practical use at the bottom of a 45-foot pit. It wasn't a tool, it was an offering. This is 430,000 years ago, more than 200,000 years before our species, Homo sapiens, even existed. Whatever death meant to the people who carried those bodies down into the dark, it meant something. It meant enough to risk the climb. Fast forward to Africa, a cave on the coast of Kenya called Panga Yasaidi, around 78,000 years ago. Researchers excavating this site found something that stopped them cold. A pit, deliberately dug, and inside, curled up in the fetal position, was a small child. Between 2.5 and 3 years old, named Mtoto by the research team, a Swahili word meaning child. The bones were still articulated, still connected in the right order, which means the body decomposed right there in the pit. Someone dug a hole, placed the child gently inside, and covered it. This was published in the journal Nature in 2021. It is the oldest confirmed intentional human burial in Africa. And here's what hits hard. The child was placed in the fetal position. Curled, like sleeping, like returning. Did they mean for that? Did they know what they were doing? Were they imagining something? We don't know, but we know this. They didn't have to do it. There was no hygienic emergency forcing a careful, deliberate burial. They chose to put that child gently into the ground and cover them. That choice is the beginning of everything. Now here's the burial that changed how scientists thought about our ancient cousins entirely. Shanidar Cave, northern Iraq. In the 1950s, archaeologist Ralph Solecki excavated the remains of 10 Neanderthals buried inside. One of them, known as Shanidar IV, was surrounded by something unusual. Clumps of ancient pollen, dense enough that it couldn't have drifted in naturally. The pollen came from several types of flowers: yarrow, groundsel, grape hyacinth. Solecki's interpretation made headlines around the world. Neanderthals buried their dead with flowers. It shattered the image of Neanderthals as dumb, brutish cavemen. Here was a species that, 70,000 years ago, apparently felt something deep enough about their dead to place blooms beside them. Now, scientists still debate this. Some argue the pollen could have been brought in by bees or rodents over thousands of years. That's fair. But then in 2020, a new Neanderthal skeleton was found in that same cave, Shanidar Z, an adult in their 40s or 50s, found in the same cluster, with more evidence of deliberate placement. And here's what Cambridge archaeologist Graham Barker noted. It appeared Neanderthals kept returning to the same spot in this cave to bury their dead repeatedly, over long periods of time. That's not random. That's memory. That's a place that meant something. Whether flowers were placed there or not, someone decided this cave, this specific corner, was where you brought your dead. Again and again. That's not survival instinct. That's culture. Now here's something that shows up in burial sites across 6 continents, across hundreds of thousands of years, in cultures that never had contact with each other. Red ochre. Ochre is a natural iron-rich clay. When you grind it and mix it with liquid, it becomes a bright red-orange paint, and humans have been covering their dead with it for at least 100,000 years. At Whether Cave in Israel, where some of the oldest modern human burials have been found, bodies were coated in red ochre. At burial sites in Australia, in prehistoric Europe, in ancient Africa, in the Americas, everywhere. Now why? Researchers believe red ochre was one of humanity's first symbols. The color red was universally connected to blood, to life force, to birth, to transformation. Coating a dead person in red may have been a way of saying, this is not the end. This is a return. This is a doorway. Some researchers note the color echoes both the blood of a mother delivering new life. Others point to the way red ochre doesn't fade, doesn't decay. It was permanent in a way the person no longer was. Whatever the exact meaning, and it probably varied across cultures and time, the fact that it appears everywhere, independently, tells you something. This instinct to mark the dead, to set them apart, to do something meaningful with the body, that's not cultural. That's human. But nothing prepares you for Sunghir. About 34,000 years ago, on the plains east of what is now Moscow, Russia, hunter-gatherers buried their dead at a site we now call Sunghir. Two of the burials are some of the most extraordinary graves ever discovered anywhere on Earth. Two boys roughly 10 and 12 years old were buried head-to-head in a long, narrow grave. What was found with them? Over 10,000 handmade mammoth ivory beads. Researchers calculated that each bead required about 45 minutes to carve. That means the beads alone represent more than 10,000 hours of work. There were also 16 mammoth ivory spears, including one that was nearly 8 feet long. The spear had been made by soaking a mammoth tusk in water, heating it, and slowly bending it straight. That process takes weeks. There were fox-tooth pendants, ivory armbands, deer antlers, and carved artwork, and covering everything, red ochre. These boys had physical abnormalities. Their bones showed conditions that would have made normal daily life difficult. They were not the biggest hunters. They were not obviously the most powerful members of the group. And yet their community spent what researchers estimate to be tens of thousands of hours preparing their burial. You do not invest that kind of time and care unless you believe the dead are going somewhere, unless you believe they will need those spears, unless you believe this person right here mattered not just while alive, but beyond. This is 34,000 years ago. These were hunter-gatherers who had no writing, no cities, no organized religion as we'd recognize it, and they grieved like this. We've talked about the bones, the objects, the pits. But what about the actual human moment? What did they feel? What did they do in the hours and days after someone died? We can't know everything. But anthropologists who study modern hunter-gatherer groups that still live closest to the way ancient humans lived, give us a window. When someone dies in these communities, grief is not private. It is immediate, communal, and total. Research on groups like the Hadza of Tanzania and the San people of the Kalahari shows that the entire community stops. Work stops, hunting stops. The group comes together. The body is not left alone. People sit with it. They talk to it sometimes. They might wail openly, loudly, in a way that modern Western culture has mostly trained us to suppress. Anthropologists have noted that hunter-gatherer grief tends to be more physically expressed and more collectively held than modern urban grief. The loss belongs to everyone, not just the immediate family. And then there was storytelling. Because in a world where 81% of nighttime conversations were already stories, as we saw in anthropologist Polly Wiessner's research on the Jew/Hoansi people of the Kalahari, the stories of the dead didn't stop when they died. The dead became ancestors. Their hunts became legends. Their mistakes became warnings. Their bravery became myth. This is how memory worked before writing. And it was powerful, because in some communities, the dead could remain present for generations through the stories told around every fire, every night. The burial wasn't the end of the relationship, it was the beginning of a different kind of one. Here's the part nobody talks about. We think about death as something that ends things. But for ancient humans, confronting death may have been the thing that started something extraordinary. You cannot bury a body with flowers and grave goods unless your brain can imagine a future after death. You cannot choose a place to return your dead across generations unless you believe in something beyond the immediate moment. Every time an ancient human looked at a dead body and asked, where did they go? That question had to go somewhere. And it did. Researchers believe that the confrontation with death is one of the primary forces that drove the development of symbolic thinking. The human ability to represent things that don't physically exist. Spirits, afterlife, ancestors, gods. Dr. Mary Stiner of the University of Arizona, one of the world's leading experts on prehistoric mortuary practices, has argued that the earliest burials tell us something more important than how ancient humans treated their dead. They tell us these humans had already developed the capacity to think beyond the immediate present, to imagine, to symbolize, to believe. Boredom invented art, fire invented storytelling, and death invented faith. Not any particular religion, just the fundamental human act of looking at the end of a life and refusing to believe that's all there is. That refusal, 430,000 years ago, at the bottom of a pit in Spain, is still alive in every funeral, every grave, every candle lit for someone who is gone. So what did ancient humans do when someone died? They carried the body somewhere meaningful. They dug pits and placed the dead gently inside. They painted bodies red. They left tools, jewelry, weapons, things the dead might need. They sat together and refused to leave the body alone. They told stories until the person lived again, at least for a while, in the firelight. And they asked a question that has never stopped echoing. Where did you go? The oldest burial we've found is 430,000 years old. The newest one might be happening right now, somewhere in the world, with the same tears and the same impossible question. Nothing separates us from those people. Not really. If this changed how you think about ancient humans, drop a comment below with the detail that surprised you most. Was it the pit of bones? The 10,000 beads? I want to know.